Good afternoon and a warm welcome. You're watching Education News Network, and today we're going to be discussing the topic, how should educators deal with rude and disruptive students? And for that, we have with us a panel of educators who will be joining us in this panel discussion today. So let's welcome our first panelist of the day. We have Ms. Vandana Arora, the principal of Nahar International School, Mumbai. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
We then have Dr. Vandana Lulla, the principal of Podar International School, Mumbai. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you for being here. We then have Mrs. Radha Venkat, the principal of Jubilee International Academy, Chennai. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Mrs. Rita Taneja, the principal of DPS Jaipur. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you for being here. Our next panelist is Ms. Neelam Ravi, the principal of GJR International School, Bangalore. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Our last panelist for the day is Mr. Payam Shoghi, the principal of Venkateshwara Signature School, Raipur. Welcome, sir.
Hello, I'm the odd man out. I'm the only man here. So happy to be here.
Thank you for being here to all of you. So to discuss our topic of discussion, may I please invite Ms. Vandana Arora to speak on the topic.
Thank you, Nitya. It's a real pleasure to be here and talking about a topic which I think is a burning issue for everyone. It has always been a very important issue, but during the online classes, I think it's being very visible and clear to everyone. As far as the topic is concerned, I have a little different viewpoint with respect to just the topic itself, which is disruptive and rude behavior of students. I don't agree with the fact that the students can be rude and disruptive. I have always looked at it from the viewpoint of a disruptive and a rude behavior of a youngster is a calling for help. I see it as a behavior which is unattended by adults around, all the caregivers, whether it's teachers or parents or the other people in the society, are not able to see the real trouble a teenager or a youngster is going through, because of which he projects behavior like that, because he or she is yet to understand the nuances of the larger society. So since they don't have enough vocabulary, enough understanding, they project it in this form. That's my take on the topic.
Thank you, ma'am, for your thoughts on the topic. Dr. Vandana Lulla, could you speak on the topic, please?
A very good evening to everyone, and it's such a pleasure to be here this evening. I definitely think that it all depends on what kind of school culture and what kind of philosophy you have in a school. If you have a great philosophy and a very clear mission in a school, which clearly talks about the role and the expectations of every individual that comes to the school. So, for example, a mission of our school is providing safe, supporting, and stimulating environment and creating proactive global citizens. So if you provide a safe, supporting, and stimulating environment, and you provide that great culture in a school, you'll automatically see it seamlessly within the entire community, whether it is parents, whether it is students, whether it's board members or it's the leadership team. Everybody then starts buying, getting that bonding and buying in that mission and philosophy, and you'll never see any such areas of disruption. Also, if the school has clear policies, you will know that students very well understand the policies of the school. So if you put the right school culture, you will definitely see the right school environment. So that's my
So fostering the right culture is what is important.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I agree with that. Thanks. Mrs. Radha Venkat, can we hear from you, please?
I would first see that this topic is the need of the hour, I would say, from my point of view, because being in a school which has a rich experience of 27 years, I work for a group of institution which is called as Little Flower, and it is in the education field for the last 27 years. The very essence of this topic, I would like to say, the first thing is if the students, the environment of the student, if it mismatches the expectation, I mean their peer group is not clear, they miss certain interactions that is there in conventional classroom, or they miss the interaction that is the need of the hour in online classroom, that is when the rude and disruptive behavior arises. I would also say if the student is not in a comfort zone, a clear comfort zone, I would say a place where they couldn't vent out, that is where this kind of behavior arises. And again, let us accept the fact if there is a rude behavior, there is always a solution for it. I would suggest the teacher should have an emotional control in that kind of situation, and a pass in that situation and enforcing in that situation is always a key when it comes to handling this kind of disruptive behavior of a student. I would also say a teacher has to understand what made the child to establish or show such kind of behavior in a classroom. So with my experience, I would say we are encountering such behaviors in both online as well as conventional classroom. But the point here is we need to analyze the root cause for this behavior and also find a solution for this behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Rita Taneja, can we hear your views, please?
Yes, good evening, everybody. I think disruptive or rude behavior happens when there are no rules drawn in the classes. We should have some kind of a trust building covenant so that the children know what the limits are, the lines are drawn, and somewhere the children should be included in framing those rules. And they should be reminded that there are rules and they have to be followed. And whenever the rules are broken, there should be some kind of a reprimand or some procedure where the teacher can enforce the following of the rules and decorum of the class. I think somewhere we as teachers also need to look at the warning signs which come to us, and we should not accept any behavior which does not match our expectation. We should somewhere make our expectations very clear to the children that what we expect and how it is to be dealt with. Students have to be engaged. Definitely a very warm rapport should be there with the educator and the learner, so that there is scope that the learner can also put forward his needs and desires to the educator. And somewhere hand-holding should be there with the educator and the learners to have an amicable, cordial acceptance of how the class is supposed to function and what is beneficial for both the parties. Win-win situation should be there. Definitely, it's not a very short-term thing to happen. It takes time to develop the rapport building, and the teacher should be ready up with some kind of strategies to control the disruption and put an end to it, rather to have an argument in the open. But children should be known. They should know that these are the limits that will be accepted. After that, they must stop. And there must be a proper procedure in place for that. A robust understanding between the educator and the teacher will help. Definitely, team building exercises, formation of rules, acceptance of rules, and an engaged learner. If the teacher is able to engage the learners and somewhere they are able to diversify the focus of the children from argument to a solution, it would help. Disruption definitely happens when the teacher and the learner both are not focused upon the learning and the engagement in the class is very less. And definitely lack of rules leads to chaos. So teachers and the schools should focus upon building rules, enforcing them, sticking them on, and building up trust among the teacher and the learner.
Agree with you, ma'am. Thank you. You made some really pertinent points. Ms. Neelam Ravi, can you share your views on the topic, please?
Yeah, I agree with all whatever they have said, because it is definitely a mixed bag of what we perceive as teachers as disruptive behavior. And yes, the rules or the essential agreements or the norms of collaboration that we call, that should be framed in a classroom, whether be it online classroom or offline classrooms. Now, if we give them an opportunity to build their own rules and frame their own essential agreements, then it comes back as fine. This is something that they will follow, rather than it coming as an instruction from the teachers. That is one thing. The other thing is, yes, the classes have to be very, very engaging and very, very interactive. How does that happen? That happens if it is an inquiry-based experiential learning classroom. If it is a lecture mode, then there are ways in which students will look for an opportunity to switch off their cameras or create disturbance. Assigning roles and responsibilities to them in certain terms is definitely important, and it's not something that cannot happen during the online classes. There are various roles and responsibilities that can be assigned by the teachers so that the students who are kind of hyperactive or are, you would say, passively aggressive, where it doesn't show, it's not visible. So they will have a mode to have an added responsibility, and they will contribute to the work and the class environment. So this is something we need to understand as teachers. What do we consider as disruptive behavior? What you may consider as a disruptive behavior may not be. It could be like, fine, talking out of turn. But if we are making an interactive class, they could be talking out of turn. They will be framing the rules themselves, that they need to raise their hands. Or when the teacher gives them a chance to work in a group, a collaborative environment, that's just the time that they will be speaking probably and respecting others' views also. So there's a lot that goes on, which involves, yes, the culture of the school, the background that they are coming from, what is it that going on in their minds, the emotional turmoil that they are going through. So all these things, the teacher has to actually empathize. We need to place ourselves in their shoes and look at the situation. So the golden rule of dealing with this disruptive behavior is not to make the situation worse, but to see it from an angle from where the student is coming. That is what I have to put in.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Mr. Payam Shoghi, could we hear from you, please?
Respectfully, I wish to submit that there are no rude and disruptive students. But there are some students who sometimes behave in a rude manner or disruptive behavior. So let's be clear on that. But this is very prevalent in our system, where we tend to label children. He is disruptive and he can never improve, and that labeling thing is the problem. But let's take a step back and decide once and for all who these children are that we are working with. The identity, the human identity. What is it like? Is it just the body, or is it something greater? Now, if we turn to the Holy Scriptures, we realize that we are told that God has created man in his own image, and human beings are noble creatures. So suddenly we have to ask ourselves a question: why does a noble creature, the children are noble as well, why does a noble creature behave in this manner? A noble creature is not supposed to be rude and disruptive, but it is happening. So the first thing that a teacher, instead of labeling children and trying to find quick fix solutions, has to ask this question. And the answer is very clear. There's something going wrong with the immediate environment of the child. Now, there are some percentage of children who have inherent behavioral problems. They are attention seekers, attention-seeking behavior, in extreme forms, power-seeking behavior, and it degenerates into revenge-seeking behavior. But that's very rare. But we have them, no? And that too has happened because when they had these problems, nobody addressed them. But in most cases, the kind of disruptions that we see in class is a result of their immediate environment. Madam mentioned unengaging classrooms, uninteresting sessions, or there's something happening back home. This poor child is exposed to domestic violence or other things, the pandemic, the father has lost his job and all this stress, and they bring that in our classrooms and it results in disruptive behavior. So I think most of these are preventable. Now, instead of talking about how to deal with this, we should be talking about how do we prevent children from becoming rude and disruptive, and it can. In the majority of the cases, this kind of behavior is preventable. With a teacher who is well-trained, who has a lot of tools up her sleeve and is able, up and about, knows the children well, can prevent a lot of these. And when we prevent them timely, it actually helps work with them much better, because if these generate into some chronic problem, then we are creating problem for ourselves.
So again, teacher training here becomes important, right?
Absolutely, an ongoing program of teacher training, which unfortunately is undermined. We feel that because we are able to teach the content and the syllabus and the curriculum, we don't need anything more, but there's so much. The whole environment is changing. There's so much happening. We need to keep updated.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for your views. So moving on to our questions now, Ms. Vandana Arora, I just wanted to ask you, how important is it to understand the reason behind the behavior of a child, like a rude or disruptive child, and how should the teacher then deal with that child based on that reason?
Right. So I think, as all the panelists are saying, we all are in agreement that there are larger reasons behind the behavior. Behavior is just immediate reflection of something which is happening in the child's life. It's true that these behaviors can be handled only when we know the cause of it. And the cause largely comes from the environment. Now, that environment not necessarily is in the school. It could be at home. It could be in any other surrounding which the child is exposed to. Currently, we all know our students are exposed to way too much we even understand and we even know, because they are not just exposed to home and the school environment. Media plays a very important role in their life today, and there is a lot of understanding they gain from there. So the teachers need to be trained in terms of understanding the child's psychology. It plays a very important role. And as one of our panelists has already said, that constant trainings of teacher, constant upgrading of teachers, and a lot of work in the school, which comes from psychologists, has to be prevalent on regular basis. That will help us to understand at an early stage the real trouble which a student is going through, and help us to then deal with it in a much better way.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Rita Taneja, how challenging has it been to deal with such students during online classes? Like, can you touch upon that and maybe give us an instance?
Yes, I think when we began online classes, the problem was more prevalent than now, because definitely all of us know that we were all new to it and they were the natives of technology. They already were well versed with it. Initially, yes, memes and trolls and disruptions were there, but slowly teachers were trained. And today, of course, we are much stronger than our children also, and we learned faster. So yes, the things have become better and more streamlined, but definitely there have been many episodes, and the teachers have very bravely enforced the discipline in the classes, and things are way ahead, much better now. But I think the only thing that helped us was we were persistent, we were consistent in our efforts. Everybody became very resilient and took up the challenge very bravely, and we were able to handle it. We learned how to incorporate technology into our classes. We were able to do PDFs and flowcharts and Jamboard, and the technology really helped us. The more proficient our teachers became in handling the technology, things became easier, and disruption now is near, I think, negligible on the online classes. Because I think all the schools are having some ID controlled platforms, for example, Microsoft Teams. So nobody from outside the school can enter our classes. So that has helped us a lot in handling our classes beautifully. And experiential learning and the awareness about experiential learning, art integration came at the right moment, where the teachers were able to integrate a lot of things. The whole homes, I think, became converted into educational labs. We could see our junior children doing table manners and so many things, the gardening and everything they could do because they were at home. No doubt the senior classes had to take the help of the apps and the animation and Amrita labs, but the junior children had fun. They learned more because the teachers came up with a lot of art integration and they could manage very well. But if the teachers had gone on only with the conventional teaching, I think it would have been very difficult. As of today, I think all over India, all the teachers have learned how to integrate their learning into actual experiential learning. Hands-on training has been given, that has helped us. So activity-based teaching for the first time has come to our schools. For the first time, the parents are partnering, they're proctoring the learning of the child. That has helped us. So definitely pandemic has been devastating in many ways, but I think somewhere the hand holding that the parents have provided has really worked wonders. Now, if the child is absent from a class, the mother also knows about it, they're helping us. So definitely disruption has come down over this 1.5 years. And small groups, the remedial, the support classes have helped us to know our children much better. Today, every child in the class is a first bench child. Teachers are also very conscious because we were being judged by the families. Teachers became conscious. We all improved. We started paying more attention. Somewhere, I think this pandemic has brought a big revolution in our classrooms. Our teachers, our families, our children have become conscious of the contribution everybody does in the education of the child. It has helped. So I think the mantra of joyful learning somewhere has been made real with online teaching. And yes, I'm sure there must be cities and places where disruption of net must have caused issues. But I'm coming from Jaipur, so we do not have any problems of the net connectivity, and we have been able to make use of online teaching in a really good way, and we are quite satisfied. I'm sure the learning gap must be there in some children, but overall, when we saw the assessments and all, we were quite satisfied. And for the first time in our school, we experimented with different kinds of assessments, which helped the children give the assessments easily without a
So
lot of
innovation is really important. So despite being
technology and
devastated,
innovation has helped us. And teacher training that we always spoke about became real. They actually tried to learn something new because they could not control in the beginning. That helped. CBSE also pitched in, and we were trained to handle our assessments much better. And I think with the intervention of technology, we have been able to control our online classes and satisfactorily run our syllabus.
thank you, ma'am. So, Dr. Vandana Lulla, you spoke about the importance of creating a healthy atmosphere, culture in school, right? So, what do you think about, like, all our panelists have spoken about the kids having some sort of reason behind their behaviors. So, do you think attention deficit kids are more prone to behaving in such a manner?
So, like I think, very clearly said that we do not believe in labeling any students in the class. And we cannot specifically say that these kids are the only kids who will, try to misbehave or do something. I think it's very, very important for us to understand the first most important thing is to keep the well-being of these students in mind. While you're doing an online, there's so much focus on content and academics and knowledge. That's not the goal, or that's not the only purpose of school education. What schools did was sent out too many videos, had too many live classrooms and too much curriculum, and they tried to seamlessly move the on-campus learning to online learning. It was absolutely not possible for any human being to digest somebody to be there on the screen for hours and hours together, and such big videos to watch on various concepts. So I think what schools really did not keep in mind the attention span of these students. There's enough research on making sure that students have this much span of attention, and we need to have a timetable which is not like the normal timetable we have on campus. There need to be eye exercises, a little bit of stretch exercises, the posture. There needs to be well-being. There needs to be a lot of conversation in the class. Social skills needed to be built in the classroom so that children have the communication with other children. So putting students in groups while teaching, using various strategies had to be built in. So I think what schools really missed was the well-being aspect. So when you integrate and embed well-being with your curriculum and understand also screen time, we should not forget that we cannot have a normal school like we had, 9 to 4 and such a lot of screen time. So it's not only the students who had ADHD or learning disability had this problem. It was very normal for any student who has too much screen time to lose interest, to lose that attention span. So it's very, very important that well-being had to be embedded within the curriculum and within the timetable to keep in mind, and also making sure that students take responsibility of their learning. So I think if one set clear expectations and breaks tasks into smaller chunks, definitely the students would be keen and interested. Any student, whether it's learning disability or whether it's hearing impair, whether it's ADHD, would be happy if you broke down things into smaller chunks for the children. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Neelam, how do you think we should ensure that the other kids, I mean, we have these rude and disruptive students. I know we've established that it's not right to label them, but when these slightly troublesome students are there in class, so how do you think teachers can ensure that the other students are not influenced by them?
See, as we said, it is up to the teacher to perceive what they consider as a disruptive behavior. So whenever a classroom is going on, it is this teachers who have to frame certain strategies. The strategies play an important role in the teaching and learning process. Now, when the teacher is planning lessons, it has to be that she plans keeping in accordance with what kind of learners does she have in her class. Are they the kind of, she has to keep in mind the different learning styles these children learn through. It could be any kind of style, whether they are visual, most of us are visual, kinesthetic, or other auditory or linguistic learners. So when she is actually framing a class, it has to be more interactive. Now, what we try to keep is, keep the classrooms very, very interactive. The teacher interacts with them, just do not give them enough time for them to disrupt the class. So fine, if there are students who are finishing off their work quickly, who are answering the questions, and then they have to wait for the other person to reply. For example, if you're taking guided reading is going on or something else is going on. So in that case, yes, the teacher goes on with various strategies, the various tools to keep them engaged. So fine, she may tell them to present a particular tool, like what was put forward by one of the panelists, using Padlet, using Jamboards. All these are being done by the teachers, so that, and these responsibilities are given to the students themselves. Fine, you can do a particular group work, you can form your group and do the work in the Padlet on the Jamboard and post the link in the chat room. So that is how they do. That is one kind of like way. I'm just giving an example of the learning strategies being used by the teachers. So how they are keeping them engaged. There's something called giving them the voice to express their views in case they are finding a discomfort, they are not comfortable in a group, or they are not comfortable with a particular learning style. So in that case, they have the voice to express. And they come forward, fine, we are not comfortable with this. The teacher asks them, what is it that you would be comfortable doing? So she gives them the room. She gives them the room to express. And now, as we know, students' parents are watching along with them. So they do understand, okay, fine. The teacher is trying to understand our child also. And the child is trying to respect others' views. So that is because it's not, the whole education system is changing. What we are talking about now with this team coming in, the arts being integrated, what has been mentioned, it is every subject is kind of transdisciplinary, it's integrated. It's more about the practical and experiential learning approach. So all these things so far, like we have been devising strategies and we haven't faced as such what we would call a disruptive behavior, because students may be like the only kind of behavior that we found was something that they were interrupting in between. There's something called raise your hand. Why don't you make, oh fine, raise your hand is boring. Some students said raise your hand is so boring. Okay, why don't you just devise something else? So they made placards. Okay, what are the emojis that you can use on the placard in case you want to express certain things and you want to ask a question or you want to voice something? And they came up with different ideas. Okay, fine. We said, you want to say something? Raise your placard. Raise your card and we will get back to you. So teacher has to, because if it should not become, the teaching and learning process should not become monotonous. In fact, like they need to keep on working on it.
Students, it's very important to keep them interested.
Yes.
I'd like your permission to share an incident which I forgot. Student disruption last year for class 9 and for class 11. There was a time when we were allowed to come to school in between for a very short while, and we wanted to have offline examinations for class 9th and 11th. Our children were not very happy with coming because I think they were not well prepared. So they started a campaign, a signature campaign online to not have examinations. We were quite disturbed and perturbed, and we felt very sad that our children were doing this. So I got my student council together and we asked them that what is to be done of the solution. And they said, ma'am, if you could have some more time in between the examination, we would be very happy. And so we discussed with our SLT also, and we thought, why not let them devise their own date sheet of class 9 and 11, the student council. And we gave them an option, fine, you tell us how much time you need, but we want to have an offline examination. And they somehow nearly what we had decided they came up, but they wanted two days gap in between so they could be comfortable. So we were able to have our offline examination with the consent of the children. So I think somewhere if we do involve our children in making some big decisions, which actually don't matter much when the exam is supposed to be end to end every day, or we could just have 2 days gap. So I think that was one incident which we had a very big incident, but we were able to handle it well and nip the situation in the bud. And we were able to tide over that phase when we made our students lead the problem and come up with the solution. I think that is one example that we faced in our school where it could have been something big, but we were able to handle it by making our children take over the situation as leaders.
I agree with sorry to interrupt in between, but I agree with this because this is something we are facing online. Like you have to turn in the assignments, and that some teachers give it only 2 days or 3 days time. So our students came up with this, like moving from one grade to another, we find suddenly the burden has increased for us. If we can have an extended timeline for submitting the assignments, it will be nice. So that is something what I was talking about, giving them the choice on the voice to speak out the concerns and the choice to make out. Okay, then the teacher asked them, how many days do you really need? They said probably 3 days, 4 days. Okay, come up to one particular decision, a common decision that you would like to submit the timeline. So that is where the voice and choice comes in. That's where the whole student agency works. And this is how like the present education system has to evolve, because we are no more in the traditional system where we can snub ourselves and our students' voices.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So, Ms. Radha, do you think counseling is important for kids if the disruptive behavior gets too out of hand?
Okay, I would again not label this as a disruptive behavior. I would always say they are some attention seekers. They really need your attention. And I would like to suggest that active learning should be in place, both in online as well as the conventional classroom. Active learning always gives all the answers that you need. I would suggest there should be some learning strategies for teachers also. Have workshop for teachers then and there, train them regularly. I work for a school, and in this school, we train the teachers regularly. We call them for a one-on-one sessions sometime and teach them what are the strategies that they use. And also, not only that, since children also want a peer group, teachers also want a peer group interaction, we make them observe different classes and see how the student behaves in one class compared to the other. We tell the teachers, go into the math class, see how the interaction is. Now come back to your English class. Is the child behavior the same? If not, then who else has to be changed? Is it the teacher or the child? Again, we again categorize another thing. That is not only the child. Help the student to see the error of his or ways or her ways so that it doesn't happen again. Always.
That's a very good approach.
You should have to have your rules set for your conventional class as well as your online class. You should have some SOP for your online classes. You should have to tell them you have to log in on time. This is what is the rule being set for your online classes. Pick up your stationeries, pick up everything before you come to your class. Even then, if there is some disruptive behavior, you have to tell them and you have to understand from his side or her side as to why that is happening. And as a key here, train the teachers and give them some strategies on your own experience. Tell them what are the strategies that you used when you are a teacher. As a leader of a school, you are supposed to give them some ideas. Tell them that when I was working as a teacher, this is what it is. And educate teachers to have emotional control. They cannot lecture, they cannot advise, they cannot scold because it makes the situation adverse. Being a millennial kids, they will not listen to your lectures. They're not ready to listen to your advices. They're not ready to listen to your lectures. They are ready to be accountable only. To make them accountable for the situation, they are ready to it. And give them some attention and active learning, as I was insisting on it. Put active learning into practice. You have 40 minutes of class, you have 40 students, give them a minute each. Make them accountable for the time. Ask them to speak in online classes. Ask them to interact. That is when they give their perfect attention into whatever you're teaching. They give their clear attention to your classes. And make sure we have observers in every online classes. Let them note down and tell us where the problem is. Online classes do have a lot of hiccups in this particular pandemic, but I wouldn't say it is both the same. Whether it is conventional class or an online class, it is going to be the teachers who will rule that particular class. And they have to set their classroom rules perfectly. As ma'am said, one of the panelists, she said she had a lot of issues coming up with the higher secondary kids. We are also running the same with the primary kids nowadays, with the pre-primary kids also. They come up and say, we're not ready to do this. We are okay with this. We are ready to do a video, but not ready to do this. So making them right. What is the major setback that we have got as a school educators now is they stopped writing. Do we know we are giving them a lot of assignments? Do we know that they are writing? And we need to put that in place. There are a lot of things to make them come down or to make them understand that their behavior has to be changed, but not in the way that we used to do. When we were studying, they used to lecture us, they used to advise us. Now, no, they cannot take it. We can only enforce. We can have to keep ourselves at pass. And we need to, and one particular golden rule that I adopt is unwillingness to react to such behaviors. I repeat it, unwillingness to react to such behavior, and also a quick pass will end that rude behavior. For us, every child is a child in its own behavior. So we need to adopt our own strategy and bring down that behavior. That is when we can call ourselves as an educator. And to be successful, we need to have our own golden rules and our own golden strategies in place. And that comes through training, and that comes through experience as well.
Thank you, ma'am. So my last question goes to Mr. Payam. So do you think suspensions and expulsions are ever an option, a solution basically for dealing with such students?
Last resort, really, last resort, the very, very last resort. It's self-defeating. If you come and put your hands up and say, well, we've given up and we cannot, then the question is, have we tried enough? Or have we done the right thing? Have we tried different things? Have we understood the child? Have we really understood the problem that the child had? Expulsions are there, that's one option, and many schools take that option, and legitimately so, and justifiably so. But then, personally, I feel that it doesn't have to come to that always.
Right.
If you are able to identify the problem, if you are able to act in time, you have to teachers somehow feel that they are so overworked, they don't have enough time. You know, we talk about experiential learning, we talk about collaborative learning, we talk about a lot of things, but when it comes about implementing them in the classroom, most teachers say, well, I don't have the time, I have to complete the portion. Therefore, I have to give an exam. I don't have time. How are they going to deal with problematic behavior then if they don't have the time? So this notion that teachers are overworked, they don't have time, and they have to complete portions, and because there is forget me to say, a wretched lesson plan, therefore, you see, this system has become unyielding. Our system of education has become very mechanical. Everybody swears by the lesson plan, by the portions that have to be completed. Nobody said it had to be there. The National Curriculum Framework of 2005 said that the textbook is going to be only one of the many resources that a teacher has to use. Now, I challenge, how many teachers are able to enter the class without a textbook and teach? So how are they going to find the time to deal with disruptive behavior? And as a quick fix solution, rusticate and expulsion and suspension.
And that ignores the very root of the problem.
And we are compounding the problem. This child, if he goes away from the school with the notion that I have been dealt with unfairly, I was suspended unfairly, it was not my fault, then we have created a bigger problem than that. So I think it boils down to the teacher. The teacher has to find the time, has to be on her toes, has to have all the tools. Allow me to give this example. I love this example. You know, out of all the superheroes that there are, there's one very special superhero, and that's Batman. You know, Batman does not have any superhero qualities. He's just a rich guy, but he ended up becoming a superhero because of his utility belt. He has every single thing that he will need to get out of a dangerous situation and to fight crime. He has it all there. So in a flash, he will get out something that he needs it. I think all our teachers have to become like that. They have to be well equipped with all these tools to put it out as soon as there's disruptive behavior, rude behavior, and be able to deal with that. And for heaven's sake, let's not say we don't have time. If we don't have time, then we are doing things wrong.
Thank you so much,
I totally agree with Payam, and I love that fantastic thing of superhero. And I think amazing. I really appreciate.
We all can become superheroes if we have the right tools with us. That's it. That's all it takes.
In fact,
I
sir,
totally agree.
teachers
And
are
I
the
think-
biggest social influencers as on today. When
Yeah.
children are cooped up in their homes and the only connect to the world is the teacher, why the teacher can't be the superhero that you have just said about? Why can't we have a plan B and a plan C ready with us when there is something going
So
wrong?
it's only about planning. I think it's about teaching is about effective planning. If I plan well, I make sure I know my children. I know the background of the children. I know the prior knowledge of the children. Only then can you make a class effective. You will see many times the boring aspect of a classroom is when teacher doesn't know her children. She's teaching something that the children already know. So the prior knowledge is not known to them. And that's where disruption starts, you know. So I think effective planning, effective implementation can absolutely lead to outstanding classes. If we plan well, you implement well, you will definitely have all the tools with you if you plan well. You know the learning objective, you know at the end of the class, there should be the student outcome. So if you plan student outcomes, you know that, okay, I go into the class for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and I have my learning objective, I have my student outcome. I know at the end of my class, all my kids should be able to do this, this, this. And if you implement that and you have the right tools with you, there would never be, I would never agree that any child is rude or disruptive.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you all for your insights into the topic today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepak.
And with that, we come to the end of this discussion on how should educators deal with rude and disruptive students, where our panelists provided some really valuable insights on the topic. Due to time constraints, we could only take a few questions, but if you have any additional queries about the topic, do get in touch with us offline and we'll be glad to answer them. For more such videos, do log on to our website, theENN.com, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. For now, signing off, Nitya.